Yeah, it's being recorded. Yeah. It says on my end that it's being recorded.
Right. Okay. So sorry, very sorry about today's fiasco about setting up the show. I was really excited about doing this whole thing all week. So thanks again for coming on the show, taking the time. I know it's hard with scheduling and everybody's schedule, and just daily life. And so I really appreciate the flexibility.
Yeah.
So Lynn, I again, I was super excited that you were wanting to come on to the show, and realizing that you were a part of such an iconic movie. I mean, one of the greatest. The slasher genre is my favorite. Pretty much my favorite genre in the exploitation world, and the horror friend, just in general. So I was really excited and I discovered Black Sunday pretty late in the game, and I, you know, kind of kicked myself for being so late to the game with that movie, because I feel like it's, I don't know, for the genre, for the slasher genre, in the horror world, I think it's one of the most, important movies ever made. And so I figured
Mhm.
if you want to talk about some of your really great experiences around such a classic, uh, and share some stories, and maybe tell us a little bit about your background, all those good things, if you care to.
Sure. Um, do you want to ask specific questions or do you want me just to ramble?
Um,
I'm a pretty good rambler.
well,
Hey, can you just get me a snow globe just to show Jason?
Oh, yeah.
That because there's, well, yeah, one of each, I guess, just to show him. I have things that I make every year, and so I always like to show them in case
Great.
anybody's, even if
That would
they're
be
just
excellent.
listening, if they don't see them, at least you see them, and I can always send a picture later. But it's been such there's been such an influx of love about Black Christmas that now I make black. Oh, oh dear. Okay, leave and join. Why is it saying leave and join? Okay. Oh, sorry.
I can still see you
join
fine on my end here.
Okay, let's just
Cancel
cancel that. Okay.
Yeah, should be
I don't
good.
know what it's
Yeah,
doing.
I
See,
still
it's doing
got the
funny things
recording
on my.
going, and
So these are the snow globes I make. If you can see that,
yeah, oh, yeah,
that's
definitely.
and then I also make Black Christmas ornaments.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, so we get that out of the way.
Excellent.
Just in case, uh, because I was just checking my inventory. Um, Maybe I'll start with this because there is going to be a sequel to
Really?
Black Christmas, believe it or not.
There was a
And
remake,
the
right?
people who have, not a remake, it's a sequel.
Okay.
So even though I'm dead, they have created a role for me to be able to be in the sequel. The sequel is called It's Me, Billy. They've already filmed the first half of it.
Wow.
Now they're
Okay.
shooting the second half of it.
Wow.
And so I will play Claire's sister, Nancy, many years. This is now the present. And I am a private detective who I am still obsessed with my sister's murder, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of it. And Jess, played by and will be played by Olivia Hussey, she is coming back
Wow.
to
Okay.
shoot the sequel with us. So this is big news. She is coming back to shoot the sequel with us. So her character, Jess, has written a book about it, and she's exposing things. And I find out through a newspaper article about the book, and I decide to start reopening the investigation into Claire and the others' deaths in Black Christmas. 1974.
Amazing,
Anyway,
amazing.
there's an Indiegogo site. You can check it out on Facebook and they will be very happy. But yes, I'm checking my inventory because one of the perks is my is either a snow globe or my ornaments or many of the other perks that they have. Anyway, okay,
That is super
business out
cool.
of the way.
Do they have a
Yeah,
date, a release date for the
not a
sequel?
release date. We probably won't be shooting it until the snow flies, obviously Black Christmas.
Right,
So we'll be
right.
shooting it in the obviously November.
Okay.
And I'm sure what they're going to try and do is release it as fast as they can because next year is the 50th anniversary of Black
Amazing,
Christmas,
amazing, amazing.
2024. So their timing is exquisite.
Um, and
And the
so
fact that they managed to get Olivia to sign on to it is
yeah, that's
amazing.
that's
And
that's
I'm
amazing.
so excited to be reunited.
It is amazing because the last few years I've seen so much talk about this movie again. And again, like I unfortunately missed the I don't know why it was one of those movies because I grew up, in the VHS era during the whole horror thing, the whole slasher and all the exploitation movies that were coming out in the 70s and 80s. And for whatever reasons, I missed that movie, but I've been just totally blown away by discovering it so much, later and realizing what
Yeah.
like kind of the like a blueprint for slasher films that it really is. Even though like, technically there
Well,
were
I mean, and
slasher
truly it
movies before,
is.
but
Yeah.
and you're still
Well,
you
actually, it is pretty much the original of the slasher movies, and it did inspire John Carpenter and all the Halloween, um, um,
yeah, absolutely.
the Halloween. What do you call it? Legacy of Halloween. Because a lot of the things that Bob Clark, the director, was doing were very innovative at the time when we shot this movie. A lot of it being what's now known as Steadicam, but at that time was just a big old camera strapped to the
Right.
cinematographer Burt Dunk. So and using Burt as the hands climbing up the trellis outside, and it's actually Burt's hands that are strangling me. Spoiler alert. Um, so yeah, it was definitely the beginning of a new genre, and it's interesting to call them what then followed were slasher films because Black Christmas isn't as much a slasher as it is a psychological horror film.
Absolutely. Yeah, the that was the one thing I was so taken aback by was just the atmosphere and the level of suspense and the creepy factor. But I think I love gory films and things that are over the top, but I really always kind of go back towards things like the whole less is more attitude. The monster you don't see, but you
Yeah,
can sense in the room is always
exactly.
scarier.
Exactly. It's
And
kind
I
of Hitchcock, right?
very much so. And I was really blown away by the level of suspense that it had. And it's, in a relatively all in the same centralized location. And uh
Mm-hmm.
and that's,
Yep,
there's
that house is still here in Toronto.
a lot of great films that are, still coming out, but you don't see things like that too often. And which I think it really gives it kind of its own mantle. It's a standalone film just because the direction was so great, and the cast was amazing. Yourself included. I mean,
Right.
the music and just and the thing that I found so fascinating about one of the things I found so fascinating was about I've seen interviews with Bob Clark, and he was talking about his friendship with John Carpenter, and I didn't know about that at all, and on how that was such a Black Christmas was such a and also Bob Clark, his relationship with John Carpenter, how it was probably the main influence as to what created the Halloween franchise. I mean, one of the most iconic Michael Myers, one of the most
Yeah.
iconic movies and figures in horror. So just from a historical perspective, like that's as big as you can get. Um, how did so and you're still like really active. It looks like you're really active touring, going to conventions every year, and fans reaching out to you all
Yeah.
the time. And
Well, since since it sort of surfaced on Facebook when the DVD was released and the Blu-ray, and
mhm,
um, then I joined Facebook and people found me and they wanted me to go to these conventions. And I have actually adored it. I don't know whether it's now been 10 years or even more that I've
wow,
been doing them and doing a lot of podcasts. In the last year or so, though, I have found the interest in Black Christmas has grown exponentially. I have done so many podcasts about it and so many conventions, and it, it's amazing that I think it's actually increasing in popularity after all these years
incredible.
as it stumbles into its 50th year. That it's actually increasing in possible and it's but I don't know whether it was because of social media that people started discovering it, and um then people would come out anyway. I was invited to all these conventions and I've adored going to them. I've adored meeting the fans. And I really have tried to keep the mantle alive. And even if I go to a convention and not much is happening and I'm not getting attention, I just put a plastic bag on my head and I get attention then.
Yep, yep. Well, I remember
It's true.
watching the special features on the new Blu-ray edition, and you were talking about that, and it's great. I mean, it just completely hilarious. And again, I
Yeah.
I collect a lot of movies, and I watch movies all the time, and I've just seen and I've talked about it with other friends that we're kind of, if you're a fan of horror and the expectation world, that you're kind of feel like we're living in this renaissance because the amount of companies that are, Blue Underground, Mondo Macabra, Severin, all of these amazing companies that are putting
Yeah.
out all of these underground gems, that a lot that might not have had an audience at the time, but and then other films that were successful. But I feel like Black Christmas. I mean, was Black Christmas like? I mean, I know it was definitely an underground, and for what it was, a very low budget movie. But commercially, was it a hit? Did it find an audience right away when the theatrical release?
No, it had a very slow opening, I would say. Very
Interesting.
slow opening. Uh, I mean, I obviously did at the time go to whatever the original screening for the cast and that, but it did have a slow opening, and it really is interesting that it has garnered such momentum over the years. And I can't really explain why, except that I think on rediscovery, because the slasher movies went so far in one direction, going back to um, sort of the origins, became like for yourself an enormously exciting discovery that there was this film with these incredible actors that was made so far back. And once they discovered it, the word of mouth, I think, just spread like wildfire.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I see it. I mean, one of the things for me is, as far as being a collector, like what started out for me becoming, I've always loved these kinds of films, but as when I was, in my travels, I was buying some Blu-rays and rediscovering movies of my from my youth, but then it's opened up this whole other, world to other directors, other films that I was unaware of, and how vast the whole, that whole those decades were, the 70s and 80s. Uh and I've been taking lots of chances as a fan by just buying lots of movies on a lot of these labels, a lot of films I haven't
Right.
seen, and I've just been blown away. And I got this really great documentary about the whole grindhouse period, like in New York, during the 80s, 70s and 80s, and what that was like. And the idea of being able to see, a lot of these films, for very little money, and being able to see like two or three of these movies back to back. I mean, real golden period, I think, for, you know, fans of film in general. But so that's it. So do you think, I mean,
I think too, the fact that there were over the last, I guess, I don't know how many years, there were two remakes made of
right,
Black Christmas. And it made people then sort of want to go back to see the original. So I think that in a strange way helped the original Black Christmas get seen, because people were seeing, and people who had already known the original who saw the remakes were going, oh no, no, you should go and see the original Black Christmas. So I think
absolutely.
that in their whatever strange backhanded way, making the remakes actually helped promote the original.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too, with yourself included, the like I said in the beginning of the show, the cast pretty incredible with Margaret Kidder, John Saxton,
Mm.
Keir Dulau, just incredible. And when I realized, I like again, like I said, I'm I was unfortunately late to the game in discovering this amazing film. But when I saw that Keir Dulau was in this film, and from 2001, uh, A Space Odyssey, the lead role, worked with Kubrick. I was really taken aback by that. Uh,
Yeah.
did you have a relationship with him? Where you had to be obviously screen time and get to know him personally, or anything?
Well, not too much, because his scenes were not involved with the house very much. Most of my scenes were with the other women in the house, and then pretty much with Bob and the cinematographer in the attic. Um, he was around. I must say, both he and Olivia at the time, I think because of the load that they carried in the film, they weren't as participatory in sort of the after parties or Christmas parties. Bob Clark kind of made the whole shoot like a Christmas party. Even though we were shooting horrific things, he made it joyful in a funny way. We never felt particularly uncomfortable or threatened. And even, I will say, when we shot the girls listening to the phone call, he just told us at that time that it was like a dirty phone call. And of course, me being at that point, pretty much the perpetual virgin, I kind of didn't really think it was going to be as blue as it turned out to be.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty
Um,
shocking, pretty
so
shocking. I
it
well,
is pretty
especially
shocking, and still even now.
um, I I mean, you obviously probably had the experience of going to, was there like a form when Black Christmas originally came out, was there like a formal premiere, and was that the first time you got to actually see the whole
Yes,
thing?
yes, there was, but I tell you, it wasn't. It didn't at that point, and I don't know if it just wasn't, the horror genre wasn't as prolific at the time, or
Hmm.
people didn't, because people didn't really flock to it in its original screenings. I mean, it did fairly well, but it certainly, didn't break any box office records. And now I mean, I'm contacted by people that are screening it all over, certainly all over North America, all over the
Incredible.
United States. And every year at Christmas time, there's this influx of screenings. I try to get to as many as I can. Um, so I've seen
Amazing,
the film a lot.
amazing. Um, I would imagine too, there's actually a local, I live here in Maine, and there's actually a local theater
Ah,
that just started. It's called the town that the theater is in is Waldoboro, Maine, and there's a Waldo Theater, which is this brand new theater that just started to. They just put a bunch of money into it, and it's a performance center, and they're showing movies. But one a group that is now really doing that, or really they're really proactive, is a group called Waldo After Dark, and they pretty
yeah,
much
I've heard of it.
specialize. They specialize in showing a lot of these B exploitation movies. One of the shows they have coming up soon is Maniac Cop. You know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe less week. So, I
Yeah.
mean, and it's
Well, I
amazing. And
hope
I've
they invite
noticed,
me when they have a
sorry,
screening.
no, that's what I mean. I want to, like, I've
I said, I
gotten to
hope they
know,
invite me when they have a screening.
I've gotten to know them a little, those folks a little bit. And, you know, and they know, me from my little channel that I have, and I've gone to, you know, quite a handful of those movies, and it's a wonderful experience. And I've seen it kind of grow slowly because they're showing, you know, it's for me, it's the best theater around. I love big budget Hollywood movies too, but my favorite thing to always go to is this very style. And so it's such a great thing to have, and it seems like it's slowly growing. So maybe we can work something out and definitely get Black Christmas because they have this amazing state of the art sound system, that's like
Mm.
pretty much the best system around. So seeing these movies on the big screen with this sound system is like truly immersive and wonderful. So I think, you know, something, and again, that's one of the things I loved about Black Christmas was just the sheer atmosphere and the film score, and just the like you can, it's so dense you can kind of taste it. And I think I think like you said, it's not really, you know, it's different from its time because obviously there is gore in it, and it does have a sleazy element to it, but it's it doesn't rely on, you know, uh scenes of copious amounts of violence, and it's just about the suspense. And so I think, you know, into itself, even though it influenced the genre like by like leaps and bounds and was ahead of its time, it was kind of cut from a different cloth, like you said, the Hitchcock analogy, you know, like I think it very much
Mm-hmm.
has almost more in common to a degree with that kind of filmmaking. You know, it's very interesting, and you don't see it, you know, don't see that very
And that's
often.
what's interesting now about It's Me, Billy, because Billy is never really revealed except by an eye or a voice in the original Black Christmas. So it will be interesting for fans to see um, Billy,
Right, right.
what Billy looks like now. Um, and I was just going to mention too that Maine, I mean, you're in Stephen King country, so
Absolutely. Yeah.
no wonder the Waldo Theater will be big.
Yeah, yeah. It's very cool. You know, nice new development that's happened here in Maine, or at least here in the mid coast where I live. And you know, it just started. It just they basically started this whole thing in the middle of winter, so it's been very cool. So I'm just curious too. After Black Christmas, did you continue making films and still have a pretty great, happy career with everything that followed?
Yeah, I sure did. I made another horror movie not long afterwards called Curtains, uh, which the kind of log line is six actresses up for the same part, and one of them will kill to get it. And I won't do any spoilers, but I enjoyed making that one because I wasn't dead by the end of the first reel.
Right, right.
And then I did Strange Brew, which is this big Canadian film with Bob and Doug McKenzie, which is still a big hit. And I still do a lot of conventions for Strange Brew. And I'm still making movies now. I was in the remake of Fahrenheit 451.
Wow,
I
very
just worked
cool.
with Eli Roth, who's the Grindhouse guy who
Wow,
did the
okay.
trailer
Wow.
Thanksgiving. Eli Roth is now making a full length version of the movie Thanksgiving, and I had a cameo
Wow.
role in it.
So
Um,
cool.
yeah, so I'm still really making movies. I just also finished Priscilla, which is about Priscilla Presley and Elvis Presley, and I played Elvis Presley's grandmother in that, and it was
Very cool.
directed by Sofia Coppola.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. And
So
getting back
yeah,
to,
and all through that, yeah, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry. That's incredible. That's amazing to have like a career spanning decades, you know, and because Black Christmas was pretty much your debut for the
Yeah,
most part.
pretty much. I'd been a serious stage actress at that point. I was working at the Stratford Festival, doing Shakespeare. So
So cool.
it was a departure for me. I did do a Stephen King one too, called Storm of the Century.
Wow. Okay. Very cool. Very cool. The um the other thing too, I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about is the whole like Canadian scene. I I've been really fascinated by certain movies that have been coming out of of Canada, movies like The Siege and then all of the great work, David Cronenberg. And it
Mm,
seemed like there was a really, there was a pretty big, like kind of golden period in Canada for a lot of independent filmmakers and horror filmmakers, exploitation directors. Is uh is is the status where Canada is still there's still a lot of activity in regards, and then also like what it was like back then when you guys were making this movie?
well, I think you're right. I mean, I think there was really a golden period where, all My Bloody Valentine and Happy Birthday to Me and all those
Right,
movies that came out of Canada, um, with all those actually Canadian actors, which was fabulous. I mean, I wouldn't say that now it was. I mean, there's still an awful lot of independent work being done. I've made so many little independent horror films, which I really, really love to make. The little shorter ones are really
right,
fun, and
right,
that's really busy right now. And also because people can literally shoot them on their iPhones. I mean, so we can make them and get them out there in proliferation without having to wait for government funding or any of that
right,
kind of thing. I
right.
will say, I just worked with Adam McGoyan, who is a very well known Canadian director of a genre. I just shot a film with him called Seven Veils. Not that he's really of the horror genre, but the one that we shot is, which is very cool.
Awesome, awesome.
um yeah, there is some, yeah, well, because it's based on the opera Salome, and if you know that opera, Salome has John the Baptist's head. Well, she has his head cut off and then she takes it with her. She That's all she wants from her parents. She wants the head of John the Baptist. So there's a lot of blood and gore in
Mhm.
Salome, which means there'll be blood and gore in Seven Veils as well.
Very cool, very cool. And I was just curious too, like, um, I mean, obviously Black Christmas is like, it just seems like the momentum is just has grown exponentially even more the last few years.
Oh yeah.
Where do you kind of feel like, I mean, as
Yeah.
far as like with people streaming and film theaters struggling to a degree, but I think that's going to still be a thing. How do you feel, or where do you feel the genre itself um, is as far as horror and everything kind of related to that, as far as like seeing it grow to where it is now over these past, you know, decades?
Yeah. I think it's really making a comeback. As I said, I'm seeing um, a lot more filmmakers interested in working in that genre now because I think, if you've got your eye to the zeitgeist, you can see that that's
Absolutely.
what people are really flocking to. Those are the movies that people really want to see. I think we're kind of getting overwhelmed by the blockbusters so much and all the special effects, and they want to see some more. Particularly, I think the psychological horror. They're coming up with some really interesting ideas. I've been putting it out in the universe that I'm dying to play a serial killer and a little old lady next
Wonderful.
door who just,
Fingers
has
crossed, right?
bodies buried in the basement. So yeah, from my lips to God's ears. But yeah, I think it is definitely coming back. And just because I have sort of I've embraced this community that certainly exists here and it exists other places too. But I have embraced this community of fans that are just like rabid for
Oh,
these
absolutely.
these films and want more and more. And it's great. It's so great to see that there's so much production looking in that direction now because actually for me it's been one of my my favorites as well. I will say a funny little side note. When I moved to LA, lo and behold, I ended up with my husband at the time buying John Carpenter's house. So
Oh,
the connection between John Carpenter and I still am very close friends with Nancy Loomis and her husband Tommy Lee Wallace from the
very
original
cool.
Halloween.
Great, very
So I mean, it's all in my DNA.
incredible. Um, well,
Yeah.
Lynn, we're closing up on an hour. I don't want to take up any more time, and I really, really thank you so much for being a guest on the show, taking the time, and I'm, incredibly sorry for the delay
Oh,
today. Um, Super fun.
oh no, my pleasure.
You're, I think, you're involved with the film and also has, you continue to have a career that has like left its mark. And I definitely think, getting back to Black Christmas, I think, if I kind of feel like if that movie didn't exist, horror would probably still, uh, would have gone on, but I think it would have been significantly different without that film as, to a degree, acting as like a blueprint for the genre. And it's one of the most important movies. I think
Wow, that's wonderful.
I was talking about that the other day where you know, again, I kind of kicked myself for being so late to the game of seeing that film. But I kind of felt like over some time after seeing it and living with it for a while, I kind of felt like, if a person calls themselves a fan of horror, and particularly like the more low budget exploitation world, but really horror in general, I think it goes beyond that. I think, I think Black Christmas is like one of those like sacred texts, or one of the key things that a person should. I think it's like one of the big pieces to the puzzle of the origins of this genre that we love so much. And I think it's really, you
Well,
know, without it would be very different. It would exist, but I think it would be significantly different. So I, I really appreciate you
well,
coming on.
Jason, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you said this because I think you summed it up better than I've ever heard it summed up before.
Well, thank
Because
you.
I have been trying to find the words to describe, like I look at my husband when somebody will bring it up out of the blue, or I'll be at some other event and someone will say, well, Lynne Griffin's here from Black Christmas, and I'm gobsmacked, and I look at my husband and I say, what is happening? Why is this being so vaulted at this moment in time? But I am so over the moon grateful for uh people like you, and who are talking about it and continuing to promote it and get people who are late in the game to see it, to come
Exactly.
back and see it,
Better late than
or
never.
revisit it, I think is really great.
Well, thank you again. Is there any last things you want to throw out there before we wrap it up here?
I just want to tell you how much I enjoyed this, because it's the first interview I think I've done when people have asked me, uh, how did I hold my breath that long with a plastic bag on my head? And you just go, whatever you're paid to do,
Right,
you
right.
do it.
It's kind of a job too,
I don't know that I have a perfect answer,
Right.
but I've been making up answers all along about how, I'm not making it up, but I was a good swimmer. I could hold my breath a long time, and I played a lot of victims over my early
Mhm.
career. So, I mean, it's nice now to be in films where I get to live till the end,
Very cool.
or be the killer.
Be the killer, even
Yeah.
better.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you again.
Yeah. Well,
I really
let's hope so
appreciate it.
soon.
And
Thank you so
we'll
much.
talk soon again. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
Okay. Take care. You too.
Take care.